Ancient mariners guarded their knowledge like state secrets, whispering star paths and hidden harbors to a chosen few. These secret seafaring societies operated beyond the sight of kings and empires, and their clandestine voyages fundamentally redrew the boundaries of the ancient world. The Roman philosopher Seneca once said that if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. This was the precise challenge these hidden networks mastered. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a handful of initiates, not great emperors, laid the foundations for our globally connected planet. We will uncover how they developed advanced navigation to cross trackless oceans and established covert trade routes for priceless goods. What forgotten truths about our shared past were lost when their secret knowledge vanished. A lone Phoenician ship, its single square sail taut against the wind, did not represent a king or an emperor. It answered to a different authority entirely. A secretive guild of sailors whose discoveries were considered far too valuable for public record. While history books chronicle the marches of Roman legions and the decrees of Persian kings, a parallel story was being written on the open sea. As historian Elena Maris observes, the most significant borders crossed in antiquity were not those between kingdoms, but the psychological and geographical barriers of the ocean itself. From the Bronze Age through the Classical period, cultures like the Phoenicians and the Minoans operated in the shadows of great land empires. Their world was defined by a fierce competition for rare and vital resources. Imagine the immense value of tin, essential for forging bronze weapons, or amber, prized for its golden beauty. Controlling the routes to these materials meant holding immense power, a power best maintained through silence and subterfuge. The sea itself fostered this secrecy. A ship is a world unto itself, isolated for weeks or months, its crew bound together by shared peril and proprietary knowledge. This environment naturally gave rise to closed communities, sworn to protect their hard-won navigational secrets, their star charts, and their maps to hidden harbors. They were not just merchants, they were keepers of a sacred trust, and their covert networks would ultimately reshape the ancient world in ways no emperor could ever foresee. That vibrant purple dye, a color worth its weight in silver, was often unloaded in hidden coves under the cover of darkness. This was the hallmark of Phoenician operations. While history remembers them as master traders, their true strength was not in what they sold, but in what they concealed. Their maritime guilds functioned as closed societies, guarding their routes and methods with a level of secrecy that rivaled any state intelligence agency. The ancient geographer Strabo recorded a telling practice. He wrote that Phoenician pilots, if they suspected they were being followed by a rival ship, would deliberately run their own vessel aground on a dangerous shore. They would wreck their ship and sacrifice their cargo just to protect the location of a lucrative trading post. This was not mere commerce, it was a form of economic warfare waged through absolute secrecy. Their most powerful tools were not their ships but their minds and their closely held knowledge. They perfected celestial navigation, using the stars to cross vast, featureless stretches of sea. This complex knowledge was compiled into secret piloting guides known as peripli. These were not published maps, but handwritten scrolls detailing coastal landmarks, safe anchorages, and currents, passed only between trusted members of their guilds. To control the flow of critical resources like tin from the Atlantic, they established remote, fortified outposts. One of the most famous was Gadir, modern-day Cadiz in Spain. From these distant bases, they managed a trade with the British Isles for tin that was so discreet, it remained almost entirely unknown to the powerful empires of the Mediterranean for centuries. Their entire civilization's progress was built upon a foundation of actively concealed knowledge. The Phoenician model proved that true power in the ancient world could be achieved not through the public glory of conquest, but through the silent, controlled access to resources and routes. This powerful principle of secret maritime dominance would not end with them. The Grand Palace of Knossos was far more than an architectural marvel. It was the beating heart of a maritime empire whose true power lay hidden beneath the waves. While the Minoans of Crete are celebrated for their vibrant frescoes and labyrinthine palaces, their greatest achievement was a secretive sea supremacy that controlled the Aegean for centuries. This was a thalassocracy, a realm defined not by land borders, but by invisible routes across the water. Their society, as pieced together from puzzling linear scripts and stunning wall paintings like those at Akrotiri showing grand flotillas, points to a culture where the art of seafaring was not common knowledge. It was centralized, likely protected by a priestly class who treated this navigational wisdom as a sacred trust. As historian Alexander Kyprios suggests, the Minoans did not just use the sea, they encoded their identity within it, making their naval prowess a protected mystery. This profound connection to the ocean manifested in a remarkable confidence. Unlike other ancient powers, the Minoans built sprawling, unfortified coastal towns. They felt no need for massive land walls because their security came from their absolute command of the surrounding seas. Their dominance was secured through long-distance trade in exotic goods, from the vibrant yellow spice saffron to the volcanic glass known as obsidian, which was sharper than any metal and crucial for tools and weapons. Controlling these trade flows required not just bravery but technological secrets. They perfected shipbuilding techniques like the mortise and tenon joint, a method of interlocking wooden planks that created incredibly strong and seaworthy vessels. This knowledge was not public, it was the proprietary secret of their shipwright guilds, passed down through generations to maintain their naval advantage. Then, in a geological instant, much of this accumulated wisdom was erased. The cataclysmic eruption of the Thera volcano, an event of almost unimaginable scale, likely triggered tsunamis and climate chaos that shattered the Minoan world. Their civilization collapsed, and with it vanished the bulk of their maritime secrets. This created one of history's most profound knowledge gaps, a reset that forced the entire Eastern Mediterranean to reconfigure its power structures. Yet, the Minoan template for secret sea power had been indelibly stamped upon the world, a ghostly blueprint awaiting its next inheritor. A young apprentice, blindfolded and trembling, was led into a torch-lit sea cave to swear a blood oath. His promise was not to a king or a god, but to the stars themselves, a vow never to reveal the celestial pathways to a distant land. This ritual was the true engine of maritime power, a mechanism of secrecy built on oral traditions, binding oaths, and sacred initiations. In a world where literacy was a rare skill and a papyrus scroll could be stolen or lost at sea, the human mind was the most secure vault. Critical knowledge, the very lifeblood of their trade, was not written down for just anyone to find. It was memorized, often set to poetic verse and rhythmic chant, transforming complex navigational charts and tide tables into a living, breathing library carried within the crew. The Greek poet Hesiod hinted at this esoteric wisdom when he wrote, "Observe the measures and the timely wisdom, and so work your ship into the sea." This was not a simple instruction manual. It was a coded philosophy, a father's whispered legacy to his son. This system extended to language itself. These sailors developed their own specific jargon, a cant unintelligible to any port official or foreign spy. A simple landmark might be called the sleeping giant's tooth, while a dangerous current could be named the serpent's coil. This coded speech acted as a constant filter, ensuring that even casual conversation about a voyage remained opaque to outsiders. The social structure reinforced this secrecy. A ship's crew was more than a team. It was a pseudo-familial unit, bound by shared peril and absolute loyalty. Your life depended on the man next to you, and that trust was the glue that held their secrets fast. We see a powerful echo of this in the Norse tradition of the kenning, a poetic metaphor used in their sagas. The sea was not merely the sea, it was the whale road. A ship was the sea steed. These beautiful, cryptic phrases did more than adorn a story. They could easily serve to obscure the true names of navigational landmarks and sailing directions from the uninitiated. This creates a fascinating paradox. How could a culture of secrecy, which deliberately avoided written records, ultimately preserve knowledge more effectively than some great libraries? The answer lies in resilience. A burned library is a catastrophe. A sunken ship carrying a master navigator is a tragedy. But when that navigator's knowledge is shared through oral tradition across an entire, dispersed network of sworn sailors, the system can survive. The knowledge lives on in many minds, constantly practiced and recited, making it incredibly durable. Yet it is also heartbreakingly fragile, for when the last keeper of a star path dies without an heir, that route vanishes from human memory forever, lost as completely as a ship in a deep ocean fog. This reliance on memory and trust forced these societies to develop tools that were not just physical, but deeply intellectual, instruments for mastering a trackless world. That notched stick aligned with the horizon was more than a tool, it was a key to the cosmos. In the hands of a master navigator, this simple device could unlock a ship's precise location on the vast, empty ocean. This was celestial cartography, a secret science where the sky itself became a living, breathing map. While empires on land charted rivers and mountains, these seafaring elites were charting the heavens, creating a mental global positioning system that guided them across thousands of miles of open water. The Polynesian navigation master Hanno, who helped revive these ancient techniques, explains it perfectly. He said the star compass is not a physical object, it is a mental construct, a map of the sky that lives in the mind of the navigator. This was the ultimate safeguard, a map that could not be stolen or lost at sea unless the navigator himself was lost. These sailors from the Mediterranean to the Pacific identified what they called star paths. They memorized the exact point on the horizon where certain stars and constellations would rise and set. A journey to a specific island might be remembered as following the path of the setting star Antares, for example. Your course was a sequence of celestial markers, a connect-the-dots picture drawn in the night sky. But the sky is not static, it shifts throughout the year. This required another layer of profound knowledge. Navigators developed complex mental algorithms to account for the slow, seasonal precession of the stars. They knew that the star that marked their path in the spring would not be in the same position in the fall. They even used the zenith passage of specific stars, the point where a star passes directly overhead, to determine their latitude. If a certain star passed directly above you, you knew you were at the same latitude as your destination. The Phoenicians in the Atlantic are believed to have relied heavily on the North Star, which holds a nearly fixed position in the northern sky. Meanwhile, Pacific Islanders developed an even more elaborate system known as the star compass, which conceptually divided the entire horizon into 32 directional houses, each anchored by a specific rising or setting star. This immense body of knowledge was never written in a book. It was encoded into chants, woven into the fabric of creation stories, and represented by intricate stick charts. These charts made of shells and palm ribs were not literal maps. To an outsider, they were a meaningless tangle. But to an initiated navigator, they represented the complex interplay of ocean swells, currents, and star paths, a three-dimensional model of the sea and sky. The intellectual achievement is staggering. They built a reliable, repeatable science entirely through oral tradition and generations of sharp observation, a system so robust it could guide canoes across the greatest ocean on Earth. This mastery of the cosmos was the final piece of the puzzle. With it, they could now sail with confidence into the absolute unknown, turning the endless blue horizon from a barrier into a gateway. The world was about to get much, much larger. A single bead of Lapis Lazuli holds a map more valuable than the gem itself. Its journey from a remote Afghan mine to the burial mask of Tutankhamun traces a ghostly network that empires never controlled. This deep blue stone, more brilliant than the sky, did not travel on royal roads or with conquering armies. It moved through a relay of trusted hands, a clandestine commerce that stitched the ancient world together long before diplomats or historians took notice. Archaeological digs reveal a startling truth. Lapis Lazuli appears in Egyptian tombs and Mesopotamian temples centuries before any pharaoh or king claimed to have contact with those distant lands. This is the silent evidence of a grey market, a shadow economy operated by seafaring societies who acted as the ultimate middlemen. The entire system was a masterpiece of compartmentalization. In the mountains of Badakhshan, miners extracted the raw stone. It was then carried south through the sophisticated cities of the Indus Valley civilization. From there, the precious cargo reached the coast and entered the domain of the most secretive traders of all, the Dilmun merchants of the Persian Gulf. These sailors would ship the lapis across the water, where another group, perhaps operating from the Red Sea, would take possession. At every handoff, information was filtered. The Indus merchant knew the source mine, but not the final Gulf destination. The Dilmun sailor knew the sea route, but not the overland path. Each link in the chain was an informational firewall protecting the whole. The final consumer, an Egyptian priest or a Mesopotamian prince, saw only a magnificent blue stone. They had no idea of the thousands of miles it had traveled or the many cultures it had passed through. This ignorance was the foundation of the trader's power and profit. Consider the legendary Queen of Sheba's visit to King Solomon. The Bible speaks of her bringing great riches, gold, spices, and precious stones. This was likely less a diplomatic mission and more a high-stakes business negotiation, a summit for securing exclusive access to the flow of luxuries like lapis lazuli and frankincense. It makes you wonder, was it the ambition of kings that first globalized our world, or was it the simple, universal human desire for beautiful, rare things? This hidden commerce required more than just brave merchants. It needed a hidden infrastructure, a secret framework of supply and support that operated just beyond the shores of recorded history. From the sea, the coast of Sicily revealed only a barren marsh and a low, unremarkable island. No grand temples pierced the skyline, no bustling wharves lined the shore. Yet this place, Motia, was one of the wealthiest and most powerful Phoenician outposts in the entire Mediterranean. Its secret was its deliberate obscurity. Hidden harbors like this were the physical heart of the secret maritime network, nodes of trade and intelligence designed to be invisible to all but the initiated. They functioned as the ancient world's offshore banking havens, places where goods and ideas were exchanged far from the taxing hands and watchful eyes of mainland empires. Expert maritime archaeologist Dr. Lena Petrova observes that we often find the most telling evidence of ancient trade not in the grand ports, but in the small, strategically located coves that lack the monumental architecture of official settlements. The selection process for these sites was a science of secrecy. Planners sought natural camouflage, a coastline that looked featureless from the open sea. The ideal location had a narrow, easily defended entrance, perhaps concealed behind a jutting headland or a screen of small islands. Fresh water was a non-negotiable requirement, a hidden spring or a small stream that could sustain a community without drawing attention. Unlike public cities that boasted agoras and temples, these covert outposts were purely functional. Their architecture served defense and storage, not civic pride. Communication was as covert as the harbors themselves. Signal fires on high, remote cliffs could relay simple, coded messages far out to sea, a single flash telling an approaching captain to proceed or to flee. This system allowed for a remarkable practice known as beach trading. Goods were brought ashore and laid out on the beach. Local traders would then approach, inspect the wares, and place their own goods beside them. The ship's crew would return, and if they approved of the exchange, they would take the local goods and leave their own. This entire commercial transaction could occur without the two groups ever meeting face to face or learning the other's language, minimizing risk and maintaining absolute secrecy. A place like Motia, positioned on its island between the eastern and western Mediterranean, was a perfect example of a fortified entrepot. It controlled the flow of goods, its low profile belying its immense strategic importance. How did the very geography of the coastline become a tool in the arsenal of these secret societies? The existence of these hidden ports demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of logistics and security, principles that were not just applied to the land, but were woven into the very design of their revolutionary ships. A Phoenician bireme cutting through the waves presented a paradox of intention. Its sleek, shallow hull was a masterpiece of dual purpose, designed not just for the open sea, but for probing deep into uncharted rivers and sliding silently onto any beach. This was a vessel built for ambiguity. In an instant, its crew could lower the distinctive mast and sail, transforming their ship from a recognizable merchantman into an anonymous, beached hull, its identity and purpose erased from a distant observer's view. The Greek historian Herodotus recorded an even more radical design used by others, describing ships constructed to be taken apart, their components carried overland to bypass impassable river cataracts or hostile territories. This was not mere transportation, it was engineered deception, a physical manifestation of the secrecy that governed these maritime societies. Every feature served a strategic end. Double-ended hulls allowed for a quick retreat without turning around in a narrow river or a tight cove, a vital advantage when escaping pursuit. The frames were reinforced with closely spaced ribs to withstand the relentless pounding of ocean crossings, enabling voyages far beyond the sight of land. Perhaps one of the most closely guarded technological secrets was the use of lead sheathing. Sheets of this malleable metal were nailed to the hull below the waterline, protecting the precious timber from the ravenous shipworm, a creature that could reduce a wooden ship to splinters on a long voyage. This innovation alone extended the operational range of these vessels by years, a competitive edge maintained through absolute silence. The ship was also a secure vault. Hidden compartments, cleverly integrated into the structure, could shield small, high-value cargo like uncut gems or written navigational guides from prying eyes during port inspections. It is tantalizing to consider if a device as complex as the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient analog computer for tracking celestial cycles, might have been stored in such a space, its genius hidden away until far from land. This tradition of specialized shipbuilding reached another apex with the Norse Nar. This robust, capacious cargo ship was the workhorse of the Viking Age, its design perfected over generations within tight-knit family guilds. The exact method for selecting the perfect curved timber for the keel, or the secret of the flexible clinker-built hull, was knowledge as precious as any cargo. This proprietary science allowed these ships to cross the North Atlantic, appearing without warning on coasts from Greenland to Newfoundland. The vessel was a mobile fortress, a warehouse, and a library of secret knowledge all in one. With such a perfect tool for exploration and evasion in their possession, the most daring of these sailors could now turn their gaze toward the ultimate test, the edge of the known world. The published account of Hanno's voyage was a calculated lie. While his official log described hairy savages and rivers of fire, his real logs, locked away in Carthage, likely held the true prize, the precise coordinates for trading gold and ivory along the West African coast. This was not an explorer's diary, it was a strategic disinformation campaign. The most terrifying descriptions served as a brilliant form of copyright protection. By inventing the Gorilla, a tribe of wild men and women, the Carthaginians were not just telling a good story, they were actively branding West Africa as a perilous, monstrous place, a land no sensible Greek merchant would ever dare to approach. Classical historian Professor Ben Carter explains that the most outlandish parts of Hanno's account were likely embellishments designed to paint West Africa as a terrifying place, thus preserving the Carthaginian monopoly. The political context makes this clear. Carthage was in a fierce commercial war with the Greek colonies for control of the Mediterranean's wealth. Hanno's fleet of 60 ships was not a pleasure cruise, it was a colonial armada, sent to establish a chain of secret outposts that would outflank their Greek rivals and secure a direct line to sub-Saharan riches. When we compare Hanno's fantastical descriptions with modern geography, the truth emerges from the myth. His chariot of the gods, a massive peak that seemed to touch the sky with tongues of flame, was almost certainly Mount Cameroon, an active volcano visible for miles out to sea. That river infested with crocodiles and hippos perfectly matches the Senegal River. The published Periplus was a sanitized public relations version of events, a thrilling adventure tale that concealed the real and immensely valuable navigational data. This practice was a standard tool in the secret sailor's kit. The Mediterranean was ringed with such terrifying tales, from the Gorgons waiting in the Atlantic fog to the sea monsters lurking in the Indian Ocean. These stories were more than folklore, they were geographic propaganda, creating mental barriers as effective as any fortress wall. It forces a profound question. How much of our ancient understanding of the world is based not on discovery, but on deliberate, commercially motivated lies? This blurring of myth and mapmaking reveals a world where the most accurate charts were also the most secret, a principle that guided explorers across the globe, even to the most remote islands of the vast Pacific. A massive double-hulled canoe, the Hoculaire, glided across a trackless ocean. Its journey was a whisper in the vastness, a single moment in the most ambitious and silent exploration in human history. The Polynesian expansion was a masterclass in covert discovery, settling an entire hemisphere without written records, metal tools, or any official chronicle. Their entire culture was a maritime society where the sea was not a barrier but a pathway home. Navigational knowledge, known as Ike, was treated not as common information, but as a sacred, hereditary gift, fiercely protected within select family lineages. The master navigator Pius Maupiilug, who helped revive these ancient arts for the Hoculaire's voyage, captured its essence when he said, "You do not navigate with your eyes, you navigate with your feelings, with your body, reading the ocean as a living being." This was a holistic science, a deep conversation with the natural world. Navigators memorized a mental star compass, a conceptual map of the sky divided into 32 directional houses. They learned to read the subtle language of ocean swells, feeling the way large waves refracted around unseen islands far beyond the horizon, a gentle bump in the sea felt only by the most trained senses. They watched the specific flight patterns of seabirds at dusk, knowing which species would fly out to sea to fish and return to land each night, turning birds into living compasses. They even interpreted the color and shape of clouds on the horizon, which could hint at the lagoons of an island lying beneath them. This entire body of knowledge was so sacred that revealing a single star path to an uninitiated person was a profound transgression, a betrayal of one's ancestors and one's people. What does it mean that half of our planet was settled through a process that left almost no written trace? It means the greatest journeys can be the quietest, their truths carried not on parchment, but in the whispered chants and felt instincts of generations. This silent conquest of the Pacific stands in stark contrast to the bustling, documented exchanges already transforming another part of the ancient world. While the overland Silk Road is celebrated in legend, its maritime counterpart was the true superhighway of the ancient world, a liquid Silk Road stretched across the Indian Ocean, a vast, interconnected network where Chinese junks, Arabian dhows, and Indian vessels met in a silent, cosmopolitan exchange. These sea lanes moved more than just silk and spices. They carried the very blueprint of civilizations, all under the watchful eyes of secretive maritime guilds. Historian Dr. Sanjay Subramaniam observes that the history of the Indian Ocean is a history of literal societies, of people who looked seaward and created a cosmopolitan world long before the term was coined. The key that unlocked this ocean was not a map but a calendar. The discovery of the monsoon wind patterns transformed sailing from a perilous coastal crawl into a predictable, long-distance shuttle. For half the year, the winds blew steadily from the southwest, and for the other half, they reversed from the northeast. This natural clockwork was a trade secret more valuable than any cargo, known intimately to Arab, Indian, and Persian navigators. It allowed a ship to leave the Red Sea, catch the southwest monsoon directly to India, and then wait for the winds to reverse to carry it home. This created direct cultural connections that bypassed empires entirely. Roman glassware has been found in Korean tombs, and exquisite Chinese Celadon pottery graced the shores of East Africa. But the most profound exchanges were in technology and belief. The lateen sail, a triangular marvel that allowed ships to sail efficiently against the wind, likely migrated from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean, revolutionizing European seafaring. The astrolabe, an instrument for measuring the stars, traveled along these same routes, its design refined through centuries of use. Perhaps the most powerful cargo was intangible. Buddhism did not march to Southeast Asia with an army. It sailed there on merchant vessels. Monks traveled alongside traders, their scriptures and statues carried as precious freight, transforming the spiritual landscape of entire regions from Myanmar to Indonesia. This raises a haunting question. Did these secretive sea routes operating in the spaces between empires do more to create our first multicultural world than all the official caravans and diplomatic missions combined? This fluid exchange of culture was mirrored and often preceded by a silent, biological revolution moving in the holds of these very same ships. A single chicken bone in an ancient Polynesian midden tells a story of deliberate, world-altering design. The silent cargo carried on these secret voyages was not limited to Lapis, Lazuli, or tin. It included living things, a menagerie of plants and animals that were intentionally and accidentally transported across oceans, permanently rewriting the biological boundaries of the ancient world. This was ecological imperialism in its earliest, most clandestine form. The Polynesians did not simply discover islands, they engineered them for survival. Their great double-hulled canoes were floating arks, carefully stocked with a suite of what anthropologists call canoe plants. Taro, coconut, yam, and breadfruit were not mere provisions. They were a portable agricultural toolkit, a genetic library of survival species deliberately transplanted to every new shore they settled. This was not exploration, it was a planned migration of an entire ecosystem. Along with these vital crops came unintended passengers. The Pacific rat or kior scurried aboard those same vessels. As archaeobotanist Dr. Lisa Mattisou-Smith points out, the spread of the Pacific rat, a stowaway on Polynesian canoes, is now a genetic marker we use to trace ancient migration routes. This small creature, once a stowaway, became a permanent part of the island landscapes, its DNA now a ghostly map of human movement. In the Mediterranean, a parallel process was underway. The Phoenicians, those masters of covert trade, are credited with the systematic spread of the olive tree and the grapevine far beyond their Levantine homeland. They did not just transport oil and wine, they transported the very means of production, establishing groves and vineyards in North Africa, Sicily, and Spain. This was a long-term strategy, creating agricultural dependencies and ensuring a lasting economic footprint. The consequences of this silent redistribution were both enabling and devastating. The canoe plants allowed humans to thrive on remote islands that previously lacked stable food sources. Yet, the introduction of new species, especially predators like the rat, often triggered a cascade of ecological collapse. Flightless birds and unique island creatures, having evolved for millennia without such threats, were utterly defenseless. The fate of the dodo on Mauritius is a later but iconic example of this tragic dynamic. This forces a sobering reflection. Every time a ship made landfall, it carried the power to create a new world and to end an old one. The mariners' hidden cargo of flora and fauna demonstrates that their greatest impact was often not the treasure they carried in their holds, but the irreversible changes they seeded into the very soil. This profound understanding of the living world was matched only by their secret knowledge of the world's fundamental shape, a geometry they deduced not from maps but from the rhythms of the ocean itself. That seasoned mariner never needed a philosopher's proof. He saw the world's true shape every time a trading vessel slipped beyond his view, the hull vanishing first while the sail remained, a slow sinking into the curve of the sea. This was not a theory debated in the libraries of Alexandria, but a daily, practical reality for those who lived upon the water. For generations, the initiates of secret seafaring societies carried this truth as another piece of guarded lore, an empirical fact that gave them a profound advantage over the land-bound scholars who still spoke of a flat earth resting on a giant turtle's back. Picture the hushed conversations in a hidden Phoenician port, where pilots shared observations that directly contradicted the myths of their homelands. They watched familiar constellations dip lower in the sky as they sailed south, or saw new stars rise from the horizon, a celestial dance that only made sense on a vast, spherical world. During a lunar eclipse, they witnessed the unmistakable circular shadow of their own planet creeping across the face of the moon. This knowledge was a navigational secret as potent as any star path. It allowed them to conceptualize the world as a whole, to understand that sailing west could, in theory, lead you to the east. This practical understanding almost certainly guided the Norse to Vinland, a calculated venture across the North Atlantic, not a desperate drift. The Greek philosopher Parmenides is credited with formally proposing a spherical Earth in the 5th century before the Common Era, but it is highly probable he was not inventing the idea, merely putting a name to the accumulated, whispered wisdom of sailors who had long before ventured beyond the Pillars of Hercules into the open Atlantic. So why did this fundamental truth remain a maritime secret for so long, failing to reach the mainstream consciousness of ancient civilizations for centuries? The answer lies in the very structure of these seafaring guilds. Their power and wealth were built on a monopoly of geographic knowledge. Revealing that the world was a knowable, round sphere would have demystified their craft and invited competitors into their exclusive domain. They controlled not just the routes to tin and amber, but the very perception of reality itself, a control that extended from the curvature of the horizon to the sources of the metals that forged the age itself. The value of a single bronze ingot skyrocketed as the mines of Anatolia fell silent. This was not a simple shortage, it was the unraveling of an entire age. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, the grand palaces of the Mycenaeans and Hittites burned, and the Egyptian Empire recoiled in a desperate fight for survival. Historians call this the Late Bronze Age collapse, a catastrophic event that erased entire civilizations from the map. For centuries, we have pictured this as a time of violent invasion by shadowy seafaring raiders known only as the Sea Peoples. But what if the real story was not a war of conquest, but a secret economic war waged on the high seas? The true weapon may not have been the sword, but the strategic control of tin. Bronze, the alloy that gave the age its name, is made from copper and tin. Copper was relatively common, but tin was astonishingly rare. The established empires relied on a fragile, long-distance supply chain to acquire it, a network that snaked from distant mines through the hands of secretive maritime traders. When that chain was severed, the entire system of royal gifts, elite weaponry, and military power simply crumbled. As archaeologist Professor Eric Klein suggests, it was a perfect storm of invasion, revolt, earthquakes, and crucially, the breakdown of international trade routes. The Sea Peoples, whose origins remain one of history's great mysteries, were likely not a single ethnic group but a confederation of displaced mariners, pirates, and refugees. They were the ultimate non-state actors operating outside the rigid systems of the great kingdoms. Their genius, if it can be called that, was their understanding of this economic vulnerability. Evidence suggests they may have gained control over alternative tin sources, perhaps the rich deposits in Atlantic Spain or even Cornwall in Britain. By seizing these nodes and disrupting the established sea lanes, they could choke the empires at their source. They did not need to conquer the great capitals, they only needed to starve them of the metal that defined their power. The pattern of destruction is telling. Coastal cities, the very hubs of this maritime trade network, were systematically ravaged and burned. Ugarit, a critical port in the Levant, was sacked and never reoccupied. Yet many inland centers were left untouched. This was not a random wave of destruction. It was a targeted dismantling of the enemy's economic infrastructure. This reframes the Sea Peoples from mindless barbarians into savvy economic disruptors. They understood that the Achilles heel of the Bronze Age world was its hidden, interdependent web of trade. By controlling the flow of a single, vital material, they could topple kingdoms without ever laying siege to their heartlands. It forces us to reconsider where true power resides. Is it in the throne room of a pharaoh, or in the hold of a ship that controls the supply of a critical resource? The chaos they unleashed created a vacuum, a dark age from which new powers would slowly emerge, forever changed by the lesson that the most profound wars are often fought in silence, far from the battlefield. The smoldering ruins of the Bronze Age palaces left a vacuum filled by the quiet lapping of waves on Aegean shores. In the relative isolation that followed the Great Collapse, the nascent Greek city-states began a patient reassembly of the sea's secrets, inheriting fragments of maritime knowledge from both the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. They did not invent seafaring, but they perfected a new approach to it, transforming the sea from a realm of guarded mystery into a tool of empire and a subject of philosophy. The Greeks, particularly the Ionians along the coast of Anatolia, became the great synthesizers. They studied the ship designs of the Phoenicians, adopted the celestial navigation techniques of earlier cultures, and then subjected them to the relentless light of a new force, reason. This is where maritime practicality and emerging Greek science converged. The philosopher Thales of Miletus, celebrated for predicting a solar eclipse, was also a practical engineer who advised armies on how to cross rivers. His legendary understanding of geometry and nature was not abstract. It was born from the same observational skills a navigator used to read the stars and currents. This represented a fundamental shift from secretive guild knowledge to a more systematized, though still specialized, body of learning. While the old societies protected their wisdom with oaths and obscure jargon, the Greeks began to document sailing directions and coastal descriptions more openly. The later work of men like Scylax of Carianda, who explored the Indian Ocean and wrote a periplus for the Persian king, exemplifies this move toward a more public, though still valuable, geography. This intellectual openness was matched by a new model of expansion. The establishment of Greek colonies from the Black Sea to Massalia, modern-day Marseille, was a different kind of venture than the hidden Phoenician trading posts. These were public, politically motivated settlements, often sent out by a city-state to solve problems of overpopulation or to secure strategic resources, creating a sprawling network of culturally connected ports. The ultimate demonstration of this new maritime confidence came at the Battle of Salamis. There, the outnumbered Athenian fleet did not rely on a secret known only to a few initiates. Instead, they wielded a superior communal understanding of local currents, winds, and narrow channel tactics to decisively defeat the massive Persian armada. This victory marked a pivotal moment where naval power was openly acknowledged as the very foundation of state security, no longer a shadowy accessory to land-based might. The Greek synthesis of inherited secrets with philosophical inquiry created a powerful new paradigm, one where the sea could be both understood and commanded on a public scale. This more open, yet fiercely competitive, maritime world would soon face its greatest test against the heirs of the old, secretive tradition, setting the stage for a final, devastating conflict over who would truly rule the ancient waves. That harbor smoke carried the scent of a dying world. The final destruction of Carthage was more than a military defeat. It was the systematic dismantling of a centuries-old intelligence network. The Romans, masters of the land, had finally breached the last great vault of maritime secrets. For generations, the Carthaginians, direct heirs to the Phoenician tradition, had controlled the Western Mediterranean through a monopoly on geographic knowledge. Their most precious assets were not their armies, but their piloting guides to the Atlantic, detailing routes to the tin-rich shores of Britain and the gold-laden coasts of West Africa. They guarded this information with a terrifying zeal, even reportedly drowning any foreign sailor who dared to sail past the sacred pillars of Hercules. The Greek historian Polybius captured a pivotal moment in this intelligence war. He wrote that after a Carthaginian warship ran aground, the Romans captured it and used its design as a blueprint to construct their own fleet, an act of industrial espionage that changed the course of history. This was not merely copying a ship, it was cracking a code. The Roman genius lay in their ruthless pragmatism. They did not try to match the Carthaginians' innate seafaring skill. Instead, they engineered a way to nullify it. They invented the corvus, a heavy boarding bridge with a massive iron spike. This brutal device would slam down onto an enemy deck, turning a complex battle of maneuver and ramming into a simple, bloody infantry fight on the water, a contest where the Roman legionary was supreme. The conflict also revealed a shadowy international market for specialized knowledge. The story of the Greek mercenary captain Xanthippus is telling. Hired by a desperate Carthage, he used his advanced understanding of military science to reorganize their army and lead them to a stunning victory, proving that martial expertise was a secret weapon that could be bought and sold. Yet in the end, adaptability triumphed over tradition. When Rome finally razed Carthage, they did not just salt the earth, they seized the city's legendary libraries and its secret maritime charts. This accumulated wisdom, the very soul of a seafaring society, was reportedly handed over to Rome's Numidian allies, scattering the knowledge and breaking its concentrated power. This forces a profound reflection. In a clash between a closed society guarding its secrets and an open one voraciously learning them, does victory always go to the most adaptable rather than the most secretive? The fall of Carthage marked a definitive shift, the moment the old model of secret maritime guilds was absorbed and ultimately extinguished by the relentless, systematic machine of an empire. Roman quaestors unrolled captured Phoenician scrolls, their hands moving from star charts to lists of hidden harbors. Each carefully inked symbol represented a secret that had once been guarded with lives, now becoming a line in an imperial ledger. The Roman Empire's ascendancy did not just conquer territory, it conquered knowledge itself, marking a fundamental shift from decentralized, secretive maritime networks to a state-controlled, systematized maritime economy. The sea was no longer a frontier for private guilds, but a Roman lake, the Mare Nostrum, its routes patrolled by the Roman navy and documented in official itineraries. The writer Pliny the Elder perfectly demonstrates this new openness in his Natural History, where he casually describes the trade winds to India and the source of amber in the Baltic. Information that would have been a sacrosanct, profit-protecting secret just 2 centuries earlier was now public knowledge, a data point for any Roman merchant with the capital to try his luck. The genius of Rome lay not in nautical innovation, but in logistics and infrastructure. They built lighthouses like the one that still stands at Dover to guide ships safely into port. They standardized port dues and, most crucially, systematically suppressed piracy, making the Mediterranean sea lanes safer and more predictable than they had ever been. They were the master scalers of existing systems. The most telling example is the Annona, the massive, state-managed grain shipments from Egypt that fed the city of Rome. This required a level of open, scheduled, and utterly dependable maritime traffic that was completely antithetical to the secretive, opportunistic model of the Phoenician tramp trader. A fleet had to leave Alexandria on a timetable, follow a known route, and arrive at the Roman port of Ostia to prevent famine and riots. This state control created unprecedented stability and volume in trade, a marvel of ancient globalization. But it also had a subtle, stifling effect. Where was the room for the lone captain to follow a whispered star path to an unknown shore? The bureaucratization of the sea, for all its efficiency, seemed to extinguish the very flame of daring, secret-led exploration that had redrawn the world's boundaries for 1,000 years. This rigid, state-dominated model would not last forever. When the Roman center could no longer hold, the sea would once again become a realm of shadows and whispers, offering new opportunities for secrecy in the approaching medieval age. The Roman peace shattered into 1,000 warring kingdoms, and the sea lanes fell dark once more. From the deep northern fjords, a new kind of ship emerged, its dragon-headed prow a silent promise of terror, and its very construction a closely guarded mystery. The Vikings did not arise from a void. They were the inheritors of a deep well of northern European maritime wisdom, a knowledge pool possibly fed by fading trade contacts with the Roman frontier and shadowy exchanges with Baltic seafarers. Their entire world was oriented toward the water, and the skills to master it were not public knowledge. The art of navigation and the secrets of shipbuilding were familial treasures, passed like precious heirlooms from a master shipwright to his son, or from a chieftain to his chosen successor. This intimate transmission of lore is captured in the old saga of Eric the Red, which notes of the explorer Leif Erikson. Leifr had such a sailor's luck. He was once the only man to return to Norway from a voyage, and he found a new land. Such a line is more than a boast. It is a testament to a system where a single man's accumulated, secret knowledge could mean the difference between a vanished fleet and the discovery of a continent. The Viking longship itself was their ultimate innovation, a masterpiece of dual purpose. Its shallow draft and flexible clinker-built hull allowed it to sail up open coasts and then probe deep into inland rivers, transforming in an instant from a warship to a trading vessel and back again. This flexibility was their strategic genius, enabling a single crew to trade furs with a Frankish merchant one week and sack a monastery the next. Their navigation relied on a different set of clues than their Mediterranean predecessors. They are believed to have used a sun compass, a wooden disc with calibrated markings, and may have employed a sunstone, a crystal that could pinpoint the sun's location even through dense cloud cover. But their true skill lay in reading the living ocean. They watched for the specific flight patterns of seabirds returning to land at dusk, followed the seasonal movements of whale pods, and learned to distinguish the subtle color shifts in the water that signaled deep channels or nearby shores. This hidden knowledge allowed them to stitch together a world far beyond their homelands. They established the incredible River Road, a covert network of portages and sailing routes down the Dnieper River, connecting the Baltic Sea to the wealth of Constantinople. This was a secret inland waterway, a highway for amber and silver that operated parallel to, and often in defiance of, the emerging feudal states of Europe. The Viking explosion proved with brutal clarity that the model of the secretive, kinship-based seafaring society was not extinct. It had simply retreated to the northern fringe, adapted to a new world of fractured empires, and bided its time. The principles of guarded knowledge and flexible intent, perfected in the fire and ice of the north, were now poised to be carried across the globe. That trembling compass needle did not just point north, it pointed toward the obsolescence of an entire way of life. For generations, the master navigator's authority was absolute, his knowledge a personal inheritance. Now, a simple iron needle floating in a bowl of water could tell any common sailor his direction, even under a blanket of total cloud cover. This was the beginning of the end for the old secret societies. The magnetic compass, along with devices like the astrolabe for measuring latitude, transformed navigation from an esoteric art into a teachable science. The deep personal connection to the stars and the swell, earned through a lifetime of experience, was being replaced by the cold, reliable reading of an instrument. This technological shift was powerfully exploited by the new centralized states. In Portugal, Prince Henry the Navigator established his legendary school at Sagres. This was not a guild of sworn brothers. It was a state-sponsored think tank, a deliberate and systematic effort to collect every scrap of geographic lore from Arab cartographers, Jewish astronomers, and captured pilots, compiling it all into official, standardized maps and rutters. The monopoly on knowledge, so fiercely guarded by families and guilds for centuries, was being broken by a crown that understood information as the ultimate tool of empire. The most stunning declaration of this New World Order was the Treaty of Tordesillas. With a single line drawn on a map by papal authority, Spain and Portugal carved up the entire unknown world between them. This was the ultimate act of geographic arrogance. Boundaries that had taken generations for secret sailors to discover were now being rewritten in a royal chamber, far from the sound of the sea. The great explorers of this new age, men like Columbus and Magellan, were undoubtedly brilliant and brave, but they were fundamentally different from the Phoenician captains of old. They were employees, they sailed with royal charters, their discoveries were immediately claimed for their monarchs, and their logs became state property. The age of the private, secretive voyage was over, replaced by the age of public, national expansion. So what was truly lost in this transition? The romance of the unknown, certainly. The sense that the world still held mysteries accessible only to a chosen few. The ocean became a calculated risk rather than a sacred mystery. But the spirit of these ancient mariners, their relentless curiosity and their drive to push beyond the horizon, did not vanish. It was simply co-opted, transformed, and set on a new course that would eventually lead to our modern, fully mapped planet. The heavily guarded server farms of global technology corporations are the modern world's equivalent of a Phoenician captain's secret sea chest. Inside these sterile, climate-controlled fortresses lies the new tin, the new amber, the new spice. It is data, the priceless resource that defines power in our age. The legacy of those ancient seafaring societies did not vanish with the fall of Carthage. It simply migrated from the physical ocean to the digital frontier. The same principles of monopolizing a critical resource, controlling its distribution, and protecting the knowledge of its source are now applied to software code, proprietary algorithms, and technological patents. A modern tech executive might state that their algorithm is their crown jewel, the single asset that provides their competitive edge, a sentiment that would have been perfectly understood by a Carthaginian admiral guarding his periplus from Roman eyes. The structures of secrecy are remarkably similar. Where ancient sailors formed closed guilds bound by blood oaths, today's tech workers sign stringent non-disclosure agreements and operate in siloed departments, each team aware of only a small piece of the grand design. This creates a corporate culture where knowledge is compartmentalized, a direct echo of the maritime relay that moved Lapis Lazuli from mine to market without any single participant knowing the entire route. We even see a form of digital privateering in the constant shadow war of corporate espionage, where companies hack one another to steal blueprints and strategic plans, just as the Romans reverse-engineered a captured Carthaginian ship. The most pervasive parallel is the creation of walled gardens within our technology platforms. These are digital versions of a place like Gadir, a fortified outpost where access is strictly controlled. Within the walls, the experience is seamless, but leaving means losing connectivity and a shared language with those inside. The modern quest to lay undersea internet cables and control satellite constellations is the direct descendant of establishing covert coastal outposts to dominate the flow of information. These are the hidden harbors of our global network, the physical infrastructure over which our digital lives are transported. This forces a profound question upon us. Are we living through a new age of secret societies, where the boundaries being rewritten are not geographical, but digital, economic, and social? Understanding the ancient model gives us a powerful lens to view our own time. It suggests that the human drive to control, conceal, and profit from valuable knowledge is a deep and enduring constant, whether the medium is seawater or a fiber optic cable. A single tin ingot pulled from a 3,000-year-old shipwreck can dismantle a historical consensus. This tangible evidence is the true archive of the secret sailors, a library of lost connections written in wood, metal, and clay on the silent seafloor. Since these clandestine societies guarded their records so fiercely, maritime archaeology has become our only way to listen to their whispers. The pioneer of this field, Dr. George Bass, famously described a shipwreck as a time capsule, a moment frozen in disaster that tells us more about daily life and trade than any king's chronicle. His work established the methods that now allow us to decode these sunken messages. One of the most powerful tools is dendrochronology, the study of tree rings in the ship's timbers. Each ring pattern is like a unique fingerprint for a specific year and location, telling us not only when the tree was cut, but often from which forest it came, revealing the ship's home port or the location of a secret shipyard. For metal cargo, scientists use lead isotope analysis. Every geographic source of lead, and the metals associated with it like tin and silver, has a unique isotopic signature, a chemical barcode. An ingot found in the Mediterranean can be matched definitively to a specific mine in Cornwall or the mountains of Spain, proving the existence of a long-distance trade route that no chronicler ever wrote down. Even simple clay jars, amphorae used for wine and oil, tell a story. Their distinctive shapes and pottery fabrics act as a kind of ancient branding, allowing archaeologists to trace the flow of goods from a specific Greek island or a Phoenician workshop across the entire ancient world. The Uluburan shipwreck, discovered off the coast of Turkey, is the ultimate example. This Bronze Age vessel was a floating microcosm of international trade, carrying 10 tons of copper ingots from Cyprus, tin from an unknown source, ebony from Africa, amber from the Baltic, and exquisite glass from Mesopotamia. Its cargo was a map of a hidden globalized economy, a network operating 1,000 years before we thought such a thing was possible. Similarly, the discovery of Roman shipwrecks on India's coast, filled with wine amphorae and Roman glass, provided the physical proof of direct maritime trade that historians had long dismissed as legend. Each of these finds is a decrypting key, unlocking a piece of the silent history. Even controversial discoveries, like ancient chicken bones in Chile that seem to predate Columbus, force us to reconsider the entire map. Could Polynesian or even Asian sailors have reached the Americas, leaving behind only a few scattered bones as evidence of their secret voyage? This relentless archaeological detective work proves that the ancient world was not a collection of isolated civilizations. It was a fluid, deeply interconnected sphere, and its true boundaries were not the ones drawn on land, but the invisible pathways charted by those who knew the sea's secrets. This tangible evidence of their reach forces a final, humbling question about the true architects of our world. The true legacy of these secret mariners is written not in the chronicles of kings, but in the very fabric of our connected world. They were the unsung architects, the hidden hands that stitched continents together with threads of trade and whispered knowledge, long before the age of empires claimed the credit. Their most profound achievement was not the discovery of any single shore, but the creation of the first global network, a silent web for exchanging goods, ideas, technologies, and even the very building blocks of life. From the Phoenicians guarding their star paths to the Polynesians navigating by the feel of the ocean swell, from the economic warfare of the sea peoples to the digital firewalls of our own time, a consistent thread emerges. True power resides in the control of critical knowledge, the ability to reshape reality by understanding and concealing the pathways that connect us. The Roman poet Virgil wisely said that fortune favors the bold, but for these initiates of the sea, fortune favored the secretive, the knowledgeable, and the deeply connected. Let this journey be a reminder that history often pulses most vibrantly in its shadows, and that every map we take for granted was once a treasure more valuable than gold, locked away in the memory of a chosen few. We would love to hear which of these clandestine societies you find most compelling. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this voyage into the hidden past has captivated you, please subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries that shaped our world. Thank you for watching.